Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours.
Happy Thursday.
I don't know what box you see her in, but we're pointing at her and saying,
You know what? I like this. It makes me feel like we're part of the Brady Bunch. I'm older than you all, but being part of the Brady Bunch was always kind of a goal for the young people in my era. So you have to look down
the Brady Bunch. Well, thank you all so much for joining and tuning in to Commissioner Wilson's weekly updates. If this is your first time, please feel free to drop any questions or comments in the comment box. And Drew, our virtual office hour manager, I just promoted him. He'll drop links and things like that and answer any questions that we can. Otherwise, you can email district1@ocfl.net if you want to get any information outside of this. So, Commissioner.
Yes, I have to second that, thanking Drew for being our technical wizard. Otherwise, we would just be talking to ourselves right here. So we are very grateful for the expertise that's not, you can't see him, but he is making it happen.
But he's there. Commissioner, tell us a little bit about how your week's been going. How are you feeling? And hopefully everybody in your circle is feeling better and safe.
On the mend, absolutely. I feel so fortunate I've tested negative, my husband's tested negative, my daughters have tested negative. My son is still struggling a little bit with the tail end of his COVID journey, but he was vaccinated and boosted, and he has had his flu shot. He takes really good care of himself. So he's in, top condition. We just have to kind of get over that last little hump of it. And, I think everybody out there right now, everyone I've talked to is struggling with this Omicron variant and how rapidly spread it is, which explains why we're all still kind of coming in from different places here, just to make sure that if we can keep the numbers down at all and stay out of crowds, we're going to do it.
Awesome. We also have Hannah here, our policy aide. Hannah, what's up?
Hannah had
Hello.
a birthday, so we have to wish her officially a happy birthday. And
you all are so good to me. I felt so special on my birthday. Thank you.
Well, listen, I wish that we could have done more. It would have been really fun to we talked about going on like a canoe trip or a kayak trip on a birthday.
Yeah. A water quality trip.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. All right, so unfortunately, we are still talking about COVID-19 and Omicron. If you all tuned in yesterday to the 4:30 press briefing by the mayor, the numbers were looking a little grim.
This has been such a strange variant in that the numbers spiked so fast. We were down, our rolling positivity rate here in Orange County was 3% or under, which really looks like the end of an epidemic. And to go from that to a rolling positivity rate in the 30%, so we're talking somewhere mid 30%, which if you put any group of people in a room together, that means that some of them definitely have it, which is why, once again, trying to stay in situations where we can still be distanced enough and trying to really be aware of not spreading it, right? So people who are having symptoms, even if they've been vaccinated, we are saying, please just, it's okay, stay home, work virtually if you can. If you need to be around other people, go outside, let the open air help, because the research continues to show that it's harder to transmit this bug in open air. So it dissipates a little easier. And then, we sort of know the drill for the rest of it. If we can mask, the more, good fitting mask, the better. And just trying to support each other right now and holding each other up. And if you can help give someone a ride for their booster shot, do it. Or if you want to help remind them that, it's okay if you need to take a day off to get over what you feel might be the sniffles, because it could be something that you're spreading around. And we just need to be patient with each other and kind.
Yeah. Awesome. We can definitely post all week about the testing sites. The city of Orlando just opened a testing site at Camping World Stadium. Please feel free to email us or drop a comment if you need us to drop the addresses of the Barnett Park, Eco Soccer Complex, and South orange youth sport complex addresses for those testing sites as well.
And the Barnett Park site's still open for vaccinations. I know there's been some confusion about, because there's been a tremendous need for the testing, which I really appreciate that the community is doing the right thing and getting tested right now with the spread being as fast as it is. So they know, right? So they know, and they can protect their neighbors and their coworkers and their classmates. And so if you want to get your booster or your first shot or your second shot at Barnett Park, it is still open for those testings. They're going to put up some new signage, I believe, this week, because there was some confusion about how you get out of the line for testing and get into the line for vaccinations. There are still plenty of vaccination inventory available at CVS, Walgreens. I know our medical providers around the county have them, and other pharmacies. So if you're still sort of waiting on that third, go ahead and do it, because it's just going to continue to build that immunity. And then my understanding is that even though our positivity rate is higher than it has been, and I mean with Delta or even with the first surge, that rate of positivity appears to have, we appear to be peaking, right? So what we're really hopeful of is that in the coming days that it's going to start coming back down. So, we've learned how to be a little bit more patient and just keep using those skills. Right now, luckily, we're in Florida where it's gorgeous. So if there's an ability for you to be outside, go do that. Spend a little time on your mental health and your emotional well-being, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, awesome. So last week Tuesday was the Board of County Commission meeting, and there were some pretty exciting updates. I don't know if there's any tree lovers out there, but this was your day.
Yeah, this had been something we started talking about. Well, gosh, my friends out here and the people I've lived around and talked to for years and years, we've been talking about how do we protect our tree canopy? How do we protect our beautiful shady streets and making sure that trees that were here when we got here will be here when we leave? And the bottom line is, after spending some time digging in on how to get those protections, it looked like it was going to take work in more than one front. And I am so grateful this week that we were able to get a really comprehensive presentation from a staff member. There were many staff members that worked on this and have been working really tirelessly since we started trying to accumulate all the places where we could find improvements. And it's complex because it doesn't just involve going out and putting a sticker on a tree that says protected. It involves all of our processes, right? So everything from public works and how and where we decide to put sidewalks, to the development process. And when somebody has a site plan, what is that site plan going to do to impact the tree canopy? And, back up even a step, right? What does our inventory look like? Do we know enough about what, you look at aerial views of Orange County, and there are areas that look really beautifully forested. And sometimes that is exactly what's going on. And it's something very valuable, an ecosystem that needs to be protected. But other times you come in and do a little analysis, and it turns out to have been some residual growth from an agricultural business that's no longer operating there. So that inventory needs, to really be improved and built. And then from there, really what tree protection is going to look like is several different updates in several different places in our code.
Awesome. Hannah, did you want to chime in? Because I know that, behind the scenes, you're really helping to take constituent emails and all the feedback and kind of put it all together in the notes for the commissioner before she goes up there and represents the people of District 1. But want to make sure you have time to chime in as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I gotta say this really quickly also, because I gotta give her a complete shout out. It's not just taking constituent issues when it comes to this type of tree protection and what we can do to improve, but also sitting through hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of planning meetings. And there are different groups that go and review our planning. And we were told very early on, this isn't where you ask about trees at this particular planning meeting. So Hannah packs it up and goes down to the next one. And this isn't where you ask about trees. And really what she's done is to make sure on every level that where we talk about trees is part of that decision-making process, so we know where to hone in. Okay, back to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. I wanted to say thank you to all the community advocates who came out on Tuesday and who are so open to receiving this information, because it really can be technical, and we try our best to communicate it effectively, but it definitely takes the community to be able to communicate it to their own community, because we can only do so much. So I really appreciate it. And I think, so many people have brought up, either through email or in the public comment, great points of in the implementation, real meat of this ordinance relating to the kinds of trees that you can plant, maturity ages, all of these technical pieces that are so important. And I think this ordinance, after this presentation, is going to be incredibly comprehensive, and I'm really excited about it.
I agree. And it's one of those things where there's good language in parts of our code to protect trees, but then we turn right around and leave open the door with, every exception is basically good enough to remove, right? So if the exceptions include everything from making sure that it's not part of the ingress or egress, making sure that it's not within 20 feet of the buffer, there was no reason to keep a tree based on all the list of exceptions. So taking a really fine-tooth comb through those exceptions, making sure that we understand there's going to be some places that we're going to have to compromise, but it should always default to protecting that forest. It should always default to protecting the canopy, because that's our lungs. We can't give up all of our canopy, all of our forests, and expect to breathe healthily. We talked about COVID, we talk about lung health and trying to make sure that we're all keeping each other healthy. There is a lot of evidence that in places that are heavily forested, that people have less acute lung problems, less acute long-term lung disease. So it's a no-brainer that is an investment that we have to make. And I mean, time investment and financial investment.
Not to mention, trees are just cool.
Trees are beautiful. It's been, I think, something for those of us who really love the forest and understand that inherent value. It doesn't come as a surprise, but there has been a lot of research done about the value, and that in areas that have good tree canopy, that people spend more money in small businesses, because, for anyone that's walked down, beautiful downtown Winter Garden or beautiful downtown Winter Park, it's no coincidence that those are places that have very stringent tree ordinances inside the municipality. It makes it a beautiful place. You don't get overheated walking around outside. People's health and overall quality of life are improved. There's a lot of evidence that real estate values go up with good tree canopy. There's a lot of evidence that that people have less overall anxiety and stress when they have good tree coverage. So there's so much good data out there that without even talking about the need to store carbon and the carbon sequestration or the other pollution offsetting that forests do, if we just look at the basic financial benefits that we get from keeping and restoring a tree canopy, it's enough. You add onto it the benefits of carbon, sequestration, holding onto our carbon and cooling down our temperatures. And to me, it is very obvious that there has to be something, I think, very stringent, or else we're going to be in bad shape, because it hasn't been something stringent for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another tidbit of good news that came at the Board of County Commission meeting was the update for the American Rescue Plan funding that came down from the federal government.
Yeah, we are fortunate to live in a county that's the size that was able to receive direct funds. And so even though the Treasury gives specific allocations for specific issues, for instance, rental assistance, or specifically things that are helping children and families. And there is a little more leeway for our county when we get that direct funding and it doesn't come through the state. And so we were able to hear sort of the update of where we are as a county and being able to plug in some of those funds. Obviously, a lot of the investment goes back into testing and having our health department, the county health department, operate the way it's operated since this started. I mean, you think about the volume of people that have needed a county health department, that it's really nothing we've ever met before as a challenge. And then, we're continuing to be able to help people with rental assistance. And I think if you are listening to this, or if you know anybody who has in the back, they are, falling behind, whether it's a month or 3 months, please have them reach out to the county. We are, it's a voluntary program, which means that the landlord also has to participate voluntarily, but there are still funds available. And so it doesn't have to be more than, a month, but if it is more than a month, we still can help with that. So I think the city of Orlando, for a little while, they were operating their own. They've now incorporated that into ours. So if you're in, incorporated Winter Garden, incorporated Orlando, if you are in Orange County and can hear my voice and you're falling behind in rent, you are likely eligible. Now, I know there's been some confusion between the state program and the county program. The county people that are working on this have been really good about figuring all that stuff out. They can untangle that web. So if you are hitting a dead end on the call center on the state side, it's okay. Reach out to us and we'll try to, get you with the right person and see if we can untangle whether or not that application, whether or not there's a duplicate application out there.
Awesome. Also, there was an update to the park naming process, if you wanted to just touch on that a little bit.
I love that I learn new stuff every day. And this was one of these new procedures that had not come up yet in my tenure. And it's about the way that the county names a park. In this particular park was not in District 1, but the county commissioner in that district actually put out a survey, which I thought was great, and had some options. And there was an unbelievable response for what people in the community wanted to name the park. And typically within our procedures for park naming, it is something that is either a geographical landmark, so something that describes the place, or something historical or historical person that wants to be acknowledged. So there was some options, and the one that ended up winning was actually a description of something that was on the park, or in the park, I should say. And this was a piece of land that somebody really had originally bought to develop into single family housing, I believe, maybe multifamily housing, but it was going to be developed. And then they realized that there was some really beautiful natural features to it, and that there were some really beautiful historic features to it. So they ended up actually working with the county, and then the state came together with funds to purchase it and to make it part of the Orange County Park system. So, hearing that alone, that it was, that this could have gone a different way and been paved over, but instead is now going to be part of our overall parks assets, was great to hear. And then on top of it, going through that process and hearing the way that we name it, it's very democratic. I loved it.
That's awesome. Hannah, did you want to chime in at all?
No, I saw pictures online of this park, which is now known as Timber Bridge Park on the Econ River. And,
gorgeous.
Like the commissioner said, I mean, it's really a blessing to have somebody who was going to develop it and saw something really special in that park. And looking at the pictures, I can't wait to go as soon as it's open. I mean, it looks
beautiful,
incredibly peaceful. So I think it was really cool. And it was interesting having somebody come to ask to name it something else. It was something I didn't quite expect. I thought it'd be kind of one of those procedural things that people might not pay attention to. So it was interesting to have people engaged.
Same. I loved it. I really did. I thought it was so fascinating to meet a family that had been really part of this county for generations and generations. And then, also hearing, like I said, the natural feature that ended up sort of winning out in the park name, that it was literally a timber bridge. And, one of the photos that they showed indicated where that piece of timber was. It was a downed tree that was used as a bridge. And so, I agree, we should take a field trip. We'll take some pictures and post them. I think if you live in Orange County, you could probably spend a lot of time trying to hit some of these hidden gems outside of even District 1, but even in District 1, it can keep you really busy. So I enjoy, sometimes those VCC meetings feel, like we're kind of dealing with the problems, right? Which is our job. But that was a pleasure to be able to see, a good, happy ending to that story.
Absolutely. You know, it seems like every single BCC meeting, there's a proclamation given out for whatever month or whatever initiative that's being highlighted. And I think this one is very important considering all the work that you've been doing, Commissioner, behind the scenes for homelessness. United Against Poverty received a proclamation, and maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so it was, you're exactly right. A lot of times proclamations are to acknowledge either the work that was done by somebody or some entity, or to elevate the awareness. And so this one in particular was definitely, I think, a little bit of both, in that United Against Poverty has been a provider under Orange County's umbrella of funded providers for some time, and they do, they have very different avenues of work, and some of them are really fulfilling some basic needs, day-to-day needs, and some of them are things like job training and job placement. But the bigger picture, really, to your point, is a sort of about overall this idea of poverty meaning different things in different times and in different places. And being the District 1 commissioner, we've learned so much about what poverty sort of in a rural setting looks like versus an urban setting. And we've learned so much about trying to, the importance of partnering with places like Matthew's Hope, with places that can meet people where they are, because not everybody's going to go downtown to receive whatever service it is they need, or whatever, basic human need that people deserve and should have. And so I've been so amazed by the generosity of the residents in Orange County, because Matthew's Hope, places like Matthew's Hope, they are largely completely held up by individual donations by small businesses, donations by, sometimes professional practices that are in the area, because we all sort of understand that we are all neighbors, including the people that no longer have a place to call home. And, it doesn't make them any less worthy of all the things that residents should have, which includes those daily, basic daily things that we take for granted every day, right? Our dry socks, our hot shower. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we could probably do a proclamation every single day, that we should really have a conversation following it and talk about poverty and how to get to the solutions there. And it's not any one thing, but I appreciate any time that we can shine a light on it.
Awesome. Speaking of shining a light, FPL, that was a terrible segue. There was an additional rate increase that came through the Board of County Commission meeting that you all took a look at. I don't think you had to vote on anything, but I think, maybe you would want to just touch on that a little bit.
We don't have, there's no, it's interesting because it's in our agenda. For people who kind of scan the agenda, you'll see it in there, but we don't have anything discretionary in that. There is, there's a certain amount of things that we're noticed on informationally that are recorded and kept at our county comptroller's office. And so we're really fortunate in Orange County that we have a comptroller who does a great job auditing and keeping an eye on where public dollars are going and how they're being spent. And so, oftentimes we are privy to really great in-depth research that's done out of our comptroller's office. And so, sometimes we'll talk about finding out about, purchasing or spending from another constitutional office, the sheriff's office or the courthouse. And we don't have any discretion really about those things, but they're noticed on our agenda. And so, I could spend an entire probably episode about my criticisms of FP&L, but we don't have anything discretionary as far as our ability to oversee what I feel like is sometimes their monopoly of a needed utility.
Yeah, Hannah?
I second that. It's kind of unfortunate. Some of the stuff in the informational agenda can be a little bit sad to read because we don't have any power. It's just in our faces. And so anybody who, has been paying attention to the energy sovereignty conversation has heard about the FPL rate increases that were approved at the State Public Service Commission. So this came before us, just like the commissioner said, as a notice, but unfortunately nothing we could do about it. But in case anybody's watching,
No, and like I said, it makes me feel grateful that our comptroller, though, is sort of that, we have our very own in-house accountant that allows us to, be able to scrutinize those things, even if we are not in a constitutional position to do something about it. But I think information and knowledge is power. And if you've been following the news, FP&L deserves a lot more scrutiny. They were behind, I think the Orlando Sentinel did a fabulous job of uncovering sadly, it's legal. But either way, it's very shady, this dark money scheme to influence campaigns. And, where names of organizations that were doing some campaign funding didn't really actually represent anything substantial, but it was really a front for a way for some of these deep-pocketed entities to put money into different campaigns. Now, I don't have a problem necessarily with anybody donating any amount to a particular campaign. My issue is that when it's about a candidate that isn't a real candidate, that is then just a manipulation of the election process itself. And, there's been a lot of sort of fluff that comes out of Tallahassee, and it's, to some extent out of Washington, about making sure that we are casting safe ballots. And really the fraud that's happening in our elections doesn't seem to be, there's really no evidence that it's happening on the balloting side. It's happening on the campaign side, where there isn't a law right now to nail down these fake candidates and out who they are, to disqualify them if they're not real candidates, and ultimately to uncover who's funding those. And so, it's been, if you have a chance, if you're watching this or listening to this and you're interested, just, Google Orlando Sentinel fake candidate. And it's fascinating to see the way it's been manipulated all over our state to change the outcomes of elections. And we're going to have to keep an eye on it. It's going to happen again.
Yeah, not to mention the attack on net metering happening right now. But I mean, like you said, you could do a whole episode on your feelings on FP&L, but it just makes people feel powerless. I think people are very exhausted with politics right now, but what they need to understand is that there's also consumer issues, and in your ability to turn on your light, that is politics.
Exactly.
And whether or not you want to have the freedom to invest in your property and get solar as an investment to actually increase your property value, whether or not you have the full ability to sell that excess energy back so that you can offset some of those costs that lenders rely on in order to even give you the funding to get the solar. It's really sad that they're attacking our ability to do that, among many other things.
I agree.
And you're exactly right, Lee. The exhaustion makes room for exploitation. It's already so hard to pay attention to politics. It really is. And that's why we do things like write a newsletter. It's for people to have that information. But not every office wants to have that capacity. It takes work, and informing the public takes a lot of effort. But until they're fully informed and until the public can meaningfully participate in democracy, it's not true democracy, because at this rate, they're not being accurately represented. And so, that exhaustion is so valid and it's so understandable, but it's also has to be fought when you feel it politically, because you need to make sure that you have your energy sovereignty and your female sovereignty and your local government sovereignty.
All of the above. For all my friends out there who think they vote for somebody because they represent small government, as it turns out, if someone is telling you that you can't sell back your solar, that's not small government. If they tell you, they dictate to you what goes on in your doctor's office, that's not small government. If they tell you that you can't decide in your own community whether or not you want the traffic to make a difference and whether or not a development is approved, that's not small government. And those are all things that are being decided at the state level, where they really smacked us down here locally. And I just really think that, interestingly, obviously I'm a very progressive person. I have this, my thoughts always are like, we've got to make sure that we are protecting our most vulnerable. But there are times that I, really, the idea of that small government really resounds with me. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. People take care of this. We get in and take care of this. And then I see people who really, that falls under their political ideology, but then they turn around and vote for a candidate that has a career of making decisions that really affect your day to day and that are huge government decisions, right? They are literally handing monopolies over to, these power companies, literally preventing local, people from making decisions for their own safety. We have to keep an eye on it. I know it's exhausting. I'm exhausted and I'm
You're not up in Tallahassee, but
and I just hope that, stay in there. If you're listening to this and you're one of those exhausted people, stay with us. We'll continue to talk about it in a way that is hopefully understandable and that, we can get to without it being a blue or red or without it being an R or D, that we're talking about the issues, that we're talking about the actual issues, because I think that's where we actually find our solutions. And as Americans, we've always been able to do it. We've just recently gotten so much more polarized, but I believe in this community and its ability to problem solve as long as it's not taken away from them and given to somebody that doesn't live here, somebody far away. So yeah, it's hard to see those things come up and not have, not just the ability to do something about it, but also to communicate with everybody that's going to be going to a ballot box. Like, do your homework and make sure that this person truly represents your best interests.
Yeah. Shameless little plug here. So please register to vote. Check your voter registration online. If you have a friend that just moved here, since we're growing rapidly, please make sure that all your information on your voter ID is correct, updated address, all the works. If there's any volunteer organizations out there, I don't want to plug any names right now, but if there's any organizations that are doing voter registration events, please be a part of that organization and help get people registered to vote, because it is, our voting rights are under attack. Our reproductive rights are under attack. It feels like everything is under attack right now as a Hail Mary. And, you do have a lot of power in that vote, and democracy is a verb.
Right. And they think that you're not going to show up. So prove them wrong. They think that you're not paying attention and that you're not going to show up. And I have found the exact opposite to be true. So, I'm so honored. I was appointed to the Orange County canvassing board, which means that I will have the opportunity to make sure that we do have elections of integrity. And here in Orange County, I've been in the past really fortunate to participate in the official recount supervision, and I've been a poll watcher before. So I love upfront and close democracy. And to me, the most saddening thing is when I talk to young people who think I can't make a difference. I won't make a difference, so I'm not doing it. My young people, if you're listening, when you go in to get your driver's license at the age of 16, you can pre-register to vote, which means that the day you're old enough to vote, they send you in the mail without you doing anything, your voter registration. And that's how that should be. It shouldn't be a burdensome thing to get registered to vote. And so if there's an opportunity for you to remind your teenager to get it done, if you can remind your mom to get it done, whatever it is, because when we all show up, that is where we get our power back.
Absolutely. All righty. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with some of the other discussions that came up to the board. One that we received a lot of emails for was the Lake Roberts Reserve public hearing.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that this has been an ongoing applicant and plan from years and years and years back. The first, I think, go at it was a very different look and included the city of Winter Garden. The applicant, from my understanding, reframed it, replanned it, came back in before I was sworn into office sometime. Actually, I think the DRC saw it in August of 2020. I think the P&Z, the Planning and Zoning Commission, saw it and approved of it in September of 2020. And then the Board of County Commissioners, my predecessor and the county commission that was sitting at that time, approved the zoning land use plan in November 17th of 2020. So what was on our agenda this week for Lake Roberts Reserve, and I think people also know this by Walker Pond Road, because it doesn't impact Walker Pond Road, was basically their preliminary subdivision plan had to match that original zoning change and land use plan. And so we had the opportunity only to say whether or not it was compatible based on what was put into zoning in the future land use map. The future land use map in that area requires that the density follow rural settlement density, which in this particular rural settlement is a 1 dwelling unit per acre. So it's not 3 dwelling units or 3 houses per acre. It's not quarter acre lots. It's 1 dwelling unit or 1 home per acre. And so that was it was exactly the match. It matches exactly with the community that it's, and I'm going to blank on the name of the community now, that it neighbors to all 3 sides, except for the side that is City of Winter Garden, because of course City of Winter Garden has a different density standard. But as far as the discretion that was given to the board during this week's meeting, this was not the place or the ability to do anything about the actual zoning or future land use map. It was to make sure that they were being consistent with what was decided when they updated that land use map. So I know that's a lot of development is purposefully, I think sometimes the lingo is thick and sometimes it makes little sense, but I just want people to know that what I had the ability to review and do on Tuesday was to make sure that when the plan was put into place to stick with the rural settlement density, that was continuing along that path. And of course, the Walker Pond Road residents have been very, very engaged and very active. The residents, I think, in the Lake Roberts community, that area right there on Lake Roberts, I think Butler Bay, have been wonderful communicating. And so we'll continue to keep our eyes on this. I know that there's a lot of concerns about the quality of Lake Roberts. We've had recent really good conversations with the City of Winter Garden about the use of the MSBU, the money that gets paid into a fund for the water quality there. And that's going to continue to increase. So we're going to have more opportunities to make sure that that water quality for Lake Roberts is nothing but improved. And I am pledged to keep my eyes on that very closely. And, you know, we've at this point made contact and had meetings with the developer, so they know we're keeping our eyes on it.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, now that you've explained that so thoroughly, it is hard to understand that there's so many steps that happen in such a delayed amount of time that it's sectioned out where you only have power to vote on what's right in front of you at that time. You know, and I know, you know, what you're really trying to fight for is to make sure that you can't tell someone you just can't develop just because we don't want you to develop. But what you can do is try to make sure that they're sticking to that rural settlement lifestyle and quality of life of the residents who also have that same kind of zoning, and try to defend kind of wherever that point in approval it is. So
it has to be consistent. And that's the bottom line, is that the ability we had at this point wasn't to be able to pull the plug, because this was somebody's private property that they are developing and that they have the right to utilize to some extent. Now, they don't have the right to do anything with it. And that's where, you know, we have eyes on it. And I'm very grateful Hannah met with the developer early on. We've all met with several of the residents and talked to several people either by phone or by email. And so, you know, there's absolutely more opportunities for engagement to make sure that things are not just compatible, but consistent along the process. But this was a plan that I think started out really in a very different position as far as what they brought forward. And so the community was understandably gun shy and very nervous about what the final product was going to look like. And so when the approval went through before I went into office for the land use plan change, it was set into stone at that point that it would be consistent with a West Windermere rural settlement. So that did not change. What changed was that it went from an agriculture, so it was A1, which was citrus ag, to the rural settlement 1-1, which means that it was going to be consistent with the other neighborhoods that really abut that community. I think there's probably going to be some headaches when they start doing work over there, because part of the negotiations when they got that first land use plan approved included them improving both McKinnon Road and Walker Pond Road. There had been a lot of flooding on those roads. Many of the residents on Walker Pond Road, it was an unmaintained county road which means that they did their own leveling. Their kids are, not able to catch the bus on their road. They have to walk down it without a sidewalk. And I think there was a point in time in West Orange County where that wasn't as dangerous because there were fewer cars out there, but it's become very, very dangerous for the kids that are coming down Walker Pond Road and trying to get to school. There are delivery trucks that try to get down that road, and there are potholes, and there's lots of dust that's kicked up, and the developer has taken responsibility to go ahead and turn that road into something that is going to be safer with a sidewalk and to help with storing the right now what is unmitigated stormwater.
And if I could just add to that, to be clear, not advocating for developers here, but like the commissioner said, since this has been such a long process and it's gone through so many iterations, and because the constituents were critical of it, that's necessary. Of a 78-acre property, 38 of them, I believe, are going to be conserved on Lake Roberts, and they're providing sewer access to people who live on Walker Pond Road, which both of those should hopefully improve the water quality of Lake Roberts as well.
It's a really good point, because I do think that there have been water quality concerns on Lake Roberts, and understandably right now across the county, we're trying to really do what we can to figure out the sources. And, one of the things that we're really pushing for obviously is, cracking down on the improper use of fertilizer during rainy season so that we're keeping the nutrient loads out of those lakes. But part of it also is septic, and this plan required septic, and the developer had to commit to a county sewer hookup, not just for the newer homes, but also access for the existing homes. So I do think that there was a lot of negotiations back and forth. Like I said, we will continue to have eyes on it. But for people that were primarily concerned about water quality, understanding that septic issue is not part of the equation here. There will not be any septic added, and there will in fact be septic removed, I think should be comforting. And one of the things I asked about during Tuesday's meeting was, can you speak to the people that are concerned about water quality and what this will mean? And they reiterated the commitment to having stormwater mitigation, stormwater retention somewhere that is not Lake Roberts, that's not Lake Reeves, specifically purchased easement for that. So, if you have any questions about it, we are absolutely here to try to dig back in and get the answers for those. I understand why it's anxiety provoking, because we've seen sometimes these things change hands, and then all of a sudden the plan looks different. But absolutely. I want you to know that we have been talking to people about this particular plan ever since we got into office, because that vote came through before I came into office, but really close to when I was sworn in. So really the conversations were pretty detailed early on. One of the staff members here, who has since gone to the private sector, and we're missing him terribly, was kind enough before he, finished up his work here, send us all the history. So we were able to, have in a database those meetings that happened leading up to this meeting. So any questions you have, please don't hesitate to reach out. We will definitely be able to get more information to you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. The last thing before we move into upcoming events, there was a discussion on Horizon West communication towers.
Hold on, sorry.
No problem. I can give a rundown real quick. So the communication tower, I apologize. There was a miscommunication in the newsletter, and a communication tower may eventually be proposed to be on this site, but is not a part of this site as it was approved on Tuesday. As it stands, our current code doesn't even allow communication towers where they want it. So all of that has to change in the next 6 to maybe even 8 months before a communication tower is proposed to go there. So please note that that's not a concern for Tuesday, and we apologize for that miscommunication.
Yeah, no, so it's very kind that she's apologizing, because I do think it's, a point of clarification that there was discussion. The landowner there, I think, was looking for an opportunity to do that. And we've had many discussions with people in West Orange County who really want better cell service. That being said, we understand that there are so many concerns that come with the placement of that, and we are way early on in any kind of conversation. Our code prohibits it right now. So there are permissible placements for cell towers is extremely narrow under our code. So what would need to happen in order to see anything move forward is several steps. And every step along the way, we promise to engage citizens and make sure that we're keeping you up to date. They would all be public facing. So don't worry about that sneaking in, right? You're not going to wake up someday and it's going to be right behind you. We will make sure that we are communicating at every stage and step. If there are any updates from administration, or if there are any applications that come through for really anything like that.
Great. I know that finally we're at a point where redistricting has come down to 2 maps. And so that will be coming to the board on January 25th, if you wanted to chat about that.
So if you have been following along, we've had a lot of fun. There was a group of appointed redistricting advisory board members who I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart. District 1, Zach Hoover and Ruth Ann Connor King both spent, and the entire advisory board spent countless hours looking very closely at the changing demographic across our county. Our county has grown. Some areas have grown faster than others. There are areas that we have to be really conscious of not bisecting a community, not drawing a new line through a community. There are areas that if we aren't really careful with, could potentially lose some representation somewhere. So it takes a lot of work and detail. If you haven't yet gone to the Orange County redistricting website to look at it, I would really encourage you to do it. It's fascinating. There's information about how much our county has changed over the last 10 years, because we only get to do this once every 10 years, which is really pretty incredible. So you get to see what it was like in 2000, 2010, and now here we are in 2022 already. And so District 1, no surprise, was the largest district. And, these were people in this district who I really want to represent. And I mean, all of them, right? So the people that hired me, I want to represent all of them. And I think I knew at the onset of the redistricting process that it was going to hurt at the end a little bit somewhere, somehow, because there were going to have to be cuts. And District 1 runs from Lake Apopka, Winter Garden, part of Ocoee, part of Metro West, all of Gotha, and then run it on down through Dr. Phillips, down through Lake Buena Vista. And then if you continue to go south, Williamsburg and Hunters Creek are District 1, and then you hit the Osceola line, and then take it all the way west to the Polk County line, and then to the Lake County line, all the way back up north through Horizon West and everything in between. So it was geographically it's a very diverse, beautiful district. And my communities are so different from top to bottom, and from, the east side to the west side. The outcome of the recommended map is that Ocoee is going to stay together, and District 1 is going to lose all of Ocoee, or the part of Ocoee that was in District 1. I live in unincorporated West Orange County, Windermere, right at the edge of Gotha. And so the line actually dropped really, really close to my residence, which was tough. It's tough for me. It's still tough for me. This will come to the board, and the board will look at the recommendations that have come to us from the advisory board. And the advisory board listened to different community members, listened to the different municipalities, and they really weighed their options. And then they really got kind of down to the nitty gritty and wrestled over little lines here and there. I was so impressed with the level of detail. On a personal level, I'm sad because, my neighbors just literally if you go right up the next block, are no longer going to be represented. And these were some of the people that really talked me into doing this in the first place. The first neighborhood I lived in when we first moved to District 1 is going to be out. It's going to hurt a little bit. These are my neighbors and my friends and my community, but it's still Orange County. We still work for all of Orange County. And I will hope that the transition for those communities, if that's the way that it ends up being drawn, that we can make sure that we, if we need to do a sunshine meeting or whatever we need to do to apprise the commissioner that will be inheriting those in redistricting, has all of our detailed information.
Awesome. All righty. So redistricting tune in on January 25th. We will be posting all about it. Drew also sent in the comment box the link to the website so you can read all about the process. Also on February 8th, we have the fertilizer ordinance coming up for a public hearing, which will be after 2:00 on that BCC meeting. So definitely tune in there. Super important on Martin Luther King Day, which, shout out to Martin Luther King Jr. We'll be posting some of his speeches and we'll be, highlighting that momentous day. But there's going to be a community meeting that evening at the Gotha Community Center, trying to bring people together to inform them about what's occurring with the Turnpike. If Commissioner, you wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, so so there's so much to say. So redistricting, please, let's just back up really quickly so I can kind of finish off this thought. Take a look at those. There's still time to express your concerns or your observations. If you want to, at this point, it doesn't go to that redistricting board, it goes straight to the county commission, but you are always welcome to email all of the commissioners, the mayor. We are all making decisions together on this in a sunshine meeting on that day. So please feel free to either make public comment, because that's a public meeting, or to go ahead and email ahead of time, or do both, whatever works for you, as long as you're getting your 2 cents in. Martin Luther King Jr. celebrations and remembrances, I feel like the tradition I've held close to me and my family is some service, trying to find a place to do something good, because I believe that that legacy is more than the quote. I love the quotes, and we'll put those out there too, because they're good reminders, but it's about the service. It's about finding places to lift people up and to really focus on where we are deficient in finding equity for communities and equality for our neighbors, friends, and the people that aren't always privy to the celebrations. And so that being said, it sounds like an interesting segue into talking about the Turnpike expansion in the community meeting. But I think studying some of the larger struggles in communities, and especially communities of color, it's been things like where highways are going and where exit ramps are going, and where sometimes other things that may be damaging to a community, where they're placed. And if they're placed in an area that has already either established itself as being vulnerable or has historic and cultural significance, then we need to hit the pause button. We need to get the crowd together and get loud and make sure that all the voices are heard. So, it sounds like an interesting day for that type of meeting, but we're going to have to, make sure that we are getting really cohesive messaging to make sure that we aren't losing any of the historic areas in Gotha to Turnpike expansion. There are historic sites there that have had an unbelievable amount of damage from floodwaters that, most people believe have something to do with the last time there was an expansion. And so really, this sounds like a place where, if you are interested in speaking up for a historic community, that we need you. If you were part of the group that spoke up out in Winter Garden when the Turnpike expansion was potentially going to impact Tildenville, jump in on this one also, because we're looking at, really some impacts that are, I think, when, the damage is done, it's done, and it's going to a historic site. If it's been affected or destroyed, you don't get that back. You can talk about what used to be there, and Florida just has a really sad history of doing that, of paving over something when we could have held on to it and cherished it and kept it for future generations.
Not only is it environmentally, socially, and fiscally irresponsible, but road expansions undergo a unique situation called induced demand, where the more lanes you add, the more people come. So not only is it irresponsible and harmful in all of those aspects, but it also won't even fix the congestion problem. And when you take a look at it that way, it's really hard to justify.
Yeah.
So that meeting is going
to
be
like, that's the Turnpike. That's not for us. I think that, that Turnpike was really, the goal was to funnel in people who are coming to visit, which is fine, but you're exactly right. It's not going to help ultimately our residents, and our job is to make sure we're doing what we can to protect our residents and in our communities. So yeah, it's interesting. If there is a study that we can share about that induced demand, we should do it, because it's something that I learned about this year. And talking to
Absolutely.
the brilliant people that have done the planning in Winter Garden, and looking at trying to make sure that we create walkable, bikeable communities. There is research that shows that when we add lanes, it defeats that, right? We've made now everyone more dependent on automobiles, and we've isolated people who don't have the ability to use an automobile, or don't want to, or can't afford it. And so all those things are connected, and I would love to be able to share some of that.
Great.
Absolutely. I'll put it in the comment box.
Perfect. Winter Garden is going to have a Martin Luther King parade. We'll be posting all about these Martin Luther King events. There's a bunch of events taking place throughout the county, so we'll be posting. So please follow on Instagram and on Facebook. We also have
transitioning to virtual, so just we might have to be flexible. I think some of them are transitioning to virtual. Some of them, I think, we're just if you go, just make sure you keep yourself
socially
the virtual hub. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. We've already done 2 of these events, but there'll be a public hearing on the preliminary study for Avalon Road and Fleming Road. We had a lot of constituents reach out about that. So January 20th at 2 p.m. will be the next meeting on that. Bentonshire Park will have a virtual community meeting to update on what's going on. This is going to be the second one on February 9th. The proposed West Bus Compound Planning Community Meeting is happening on February 16th. I just want to make sure I get the word out on that really, really far in advance.
Yeah, and this is relating to the old West Orange Tech, and what's going to happen right there, and where the bus depot is going. And so this is really a Orange County Public Schools policy thing that we're obviously going to be there as a voice and assisting of our community and our constituents. And there's been a lot of concern about that community right there, and a fear about loss of opportunities, and also the introduction of maybe not something so desirable as a bus depot. So we're going to continue to have, to be part of that conversation every chance we can.
Wonderful. So that's all that I have. Commissioner, do you want to say anything as we close out to everyone who's tuning in today?
Lee, I want to ask you to share with us about your new family member.
Okay, well, I haven't received the certificate yet, but I'm probably going to throw a party and invite everybody with a cake. So, Commissioner has always been a huge advocate for all animals, but also animals that are in our shelters: cats, dogs, rabbits, birds, etc. And upon meeting her, she linked me up with Pity Party of Central Florida, where, I told my boyfriend I want to find a definite euthanasia case, like the hardest dog that they have. And I want to find a way to help this dog, because this is our first time being able to have a dog in our new home. In 10 years, I haven't had a pet. And wow, what a journey. We found a dog named Moo. Worst case of heartworms the vet has ever seen. He didn't think he would live longer than 3 months. And now he's been with us for about 8 months. He just tested heartworm negative, and we were allowed to sign his adoption paperwork this past weekend.
Yeah. So exciting.
It's so exciting. And Lee, he couldn't have picked a better human to come and get him. And you have to share a picture of Moo later for everyone, because Moo smiles. Moo has a big smile, and Moo looks like he is retired to the best place ever. He has snuck his little self up on the couch where he's not supposed to be, and he gets all comfy, and I just am happy for him. And, I know that you may face some health or behavioral challenges in the future, because that's the beauty of being a pet parent, but it's worth it for the love, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I told Ernest this, my boyfriend, but he's really against it for our situation. But I said, I would be willing to give Moo to a family since he's healthy now and, foster another dog. And he was like, what? Are you crazy? And so I feel like, we have so much love to give. And really it comes down to the shelters are inundated and so many rescues are willing to go after funding to place people with fosters, and Pity Party paid for everything, every treat, every toy, every can of food. And they just need to get these dogs in a place where they can be safe, and especially if they're an extreme medical case, be able to get the really specific treatment. I would be willing to do that 100 times over if that meant that less dogs would be at risk of euthanasia, even if that meant that I would have to give Moo, who's now very well-mannered, way less aggressive, to a different home. It just would be really hard, obviously. But for those of you interested in fostering, please reach out. I would love to connect you to all the rescues that have reached out to our office. I would love to connect you to the Orange County Animal Services. They really need help right now. It seems like a lot of people adopted over quarantine, and then once they maybe sought a new job and escalated in their careers, they found out they didn't have capacity and return the animals, and there's kind of a crisis happening across the entire US.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because I think I was one of those people that after being at home on quarantine or during the lockdown period, I was like, I wonder how the dogs are going to do. The dogs slept the whole time. Healthy dogs, young dogs sleep 18 hours a day. They want to be up when you're home, and they'll be up when you're home, when you get home. And I think that there has to be some thought given when people go to adopt about whether or not it's a good fit for their living circumstances. So I'm not diminishing that need to evaluate. But if you are one of those people that adopted when you were at home because you were working from home and now you're going to an office, or you have, you're more out of the house, it doesn't mean that they are going to be sad without you. They're going to be sad without you if you give them back to the shelter. So they know if they're home, they're waiting for you and they're good. I think the shelters, right now, there's the twofold issue as far as I think where you're seeing these numbers. Part of it is people relinquishing. And I think the other part of it is that we just are growing, and anytime a community grows, every piece of it grows. So, the need for more healthcare providers, the need for more supply, the need for more, shelter space, but shelter space isn't the answer. And you are the perfect example of that. A dog doesn't do well in a shelter. And so, back when I first got involved volunteering in animal welfare, that was sort of the model for nonprofits, was to have a piece of land or a piece of property, and they operated like a shelter. But what really is successful is finding people out there that can help foster, get a dog in a situation where they're not stressed, where they can get their healthcare needs met, paid for by the rescue. And then they're in a great position to be adopted. So I love your story. I think it's such a, to me, it's Moo deserved it. And you are, just such a cute doggy mom.
Yes.
One more business item, I'm sorry, as a way heads up, just to get people ready, is also on January 25th. We're discussing how we want the public to engage with the new revived transportation sales tax. So it's a work session. It's not going to be voted on, and it's going to be specifically relating to public engagement. But I think public engagement is going to be reliant on how that tax is set up.
I agree.
So just watch out for that.
I agree. I think that the right now, administration and the mayor's office, they're putting out their feelers to see where the public stands on these things and these issues. And so a lot of the things that we talk about that are important in transit and in public transportation, we will continue to try to get those voices in and make sure they're heard. So those priorities are high up in line, because I agree. I don't think there's any point in increasing a sales tax if we're just going to do the same old things and add more pavement. It's an absolute waste. We need to leverage what we have already taken in as tax, and we need to invest in mass transit.
Awesome.
And this is why I love working for you.
All right. Well, closing out, thank you all so much for tuning in, and please feel free to email district1@ocfl.net or sign up for Hannah's absolutely gorgeous newsletter updates on NicoleWilson.org.
Beautiful.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a great rest of your day.